to welcome you everyone to our fourth episode of our series dedicated to helping you master your cash flow. I'm really thrilled to be joined by Philip King, former Small Business Commissioner and tight cash flow expert. Hello, Philip. How are you doing?
Good morning, Val. I'm very well this morning, thank you, and great to be here again.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for being here with us for episode 4. So before we start, just a quick tour of Zoom, and depending on how you're watching us, there is a toolbar either at the top or the bottom of your screen where you see a chat room and a Q&A room. So the difference is if you could use the chat room for any comments, please, that'd be fantastic. And then any questions you have for Philip, we will have at least 15 minutes of Q&A at the end. So please do use the Q&A box to ask all your questions for Philip. We'll come to the questions right at the end of the session. Please do make sure to use that. And yeah, if there is any comments you'd like to make, please use the chat room. I can see Wissam saying hi. How do I get access to earlier episode? Wissam here. Hi, Wissam. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll send all the links on the chat just at the end of the session so you can get access to everything. Hi, Sajid. Hi, everyone. So yeah, my name is Valentine Hutchings, and I'm part of the team here at Tide. For those of you who are new to Tide, I'm just going to give a very brief introduction so that you can have a better understanding before we start the masterclass. So we are the fastest online growing business current account provider in the UK, and we're used by over 350,000 businesses, and we exist to save small business owners both time and money when it comes to their business banking. So that they can focus on actually growing their business. So the sign-up process is really quick and easy. It takes between 5 and 10 minutes, and you will then receive your sort code, account number, and a few days later in the post, your card. So the app itself is easy to use, and we have a huge amount of in-app products that are designed to make your banking life a lot easier. It includes a few tools. I'm not going to talk about all of them because there's too much, but just a few of them. For instance, the auto categorization tool, which allows you to just categorize all your transaction for you. We also have an invoice feature, very relevant for this session, that allows you to create, customize, send professional invoices directly from your app, so very convenient. We also have a cash flow insight tool. I'll let Philip talk a bit more about this tool as well, because it's particularly relevant to this masterclass as well. I will also let you know a bit later on in the session how to stay in touch with Tide, how to stay in the know in terms of what masterclasses and events we are hosting. So I'll use the chat room. I'll use the chat room in a minute to send all those links to you. But yes, I can see a very good number of you joining us live. So thank you so much for being here this morning. This is the 4th episode of our series dedicated to helping you master your cash flow. In our first episode, we talked about why cash flow should be a top priority for your business. In the second one, we discussed the importance of knowing your customer. Last time in our 3rd episode, we talked about the importance of negotiating the payment terms that works for your business. But in this 4th episode, what we'll cover is the how, meaning we will talk about the invoice process and how to make sure your invoice gets processed by your client easily and rapidly. All of this to make sure you are getting paid on time. So without further ado, let's start the event with some introduction, and I'm going to let Philip introduce himself.
Thank you, Val. Good morning, everybody. My name, as Val has kindly said, is Philip King. I was until the middle of last year the interim Small Business Commissioner, and prior to that I'd spent 14 years as the Chief Executive of the Chartered Institute of Credit Management, and before that 26 years working in credit management. So mathematicians amongst you will know that I've got about 42 years experience of cash flow management, credit management, and I am passionate about all things to do with cash flow and credit, and I'm particularly passionate about supporting small businesses to help them survive, be sustainable, and to flourish. And that's why I'm so pleased to be working with Tide on this series of webinars looking at the importance of cash flow. And before I start, let me just say that Wissam was asking about previous episodes, and you're going to send the links out, Val. That's great. But yesterday I was on YouTube looking for something else. If you stick in Tide cash flow onto YouTube, then they all just pop up. And I was looking at them yesterday. I was quite surprised. I didn't realise they were so readily available. Anyway, back to you, Val.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Philip. Absolutely, they're all available on YouTube and on our blog. I'll send the links just after this, but thank you so much. So yes, we have both introduced ourselves, but we'd love to know a bit more about you. Some of you have already said where they are watching us from. That's fabulous to know where you are right now. What we'd love to know a bit more is about your business and when you started it. So I'm just going to launch a poll. You should see it on your screens. How long ago did you start your business? If you guys could answer, it'd be fabulous to get to know you a bit better before we go on with the event. Oh wow, fantastic. I'm seeing 30% this year, around 50% have started their business about a year ago. We have some very strong businesses of 10 years plus, 13%. Well, congratulations, that's massive achievement. Okay, I think almost all of you participated. I'm just going to give one more second. No, that's it. Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to end the poll. So that's some fabulous numbers. So we've got 25% of you have started their business this year. Congratulations on launching the business. 44% launched it about a year ago, and 19% have launched their business 2 or 5 years ago. Then we've got 13% of you who have launched their business 10 years or more ago. So that's some fantastic achievements. Congratulations to the ones of you who have just launched their business, and to those of you as well who are still going very strong 10 years after the launch. Fantastic to have you all on board. And I think it's quite interesting because no matter the size or when you started your business, financial forecasting is always important, especially for small businesses, right, Philip? I think we've talked about this at length during the episode 1, 2, and 3, and we'll continue talking about it. But when preparing this masterclass series and this episode in particular, you mentioned that knowing the customer, knowing what the customer needs on your invoice and how they process them enables you to meet their requirements and helps ensure they get approved easily and quickly. Asking the right question is key. So just to drill down a bit more on those questions, we ran a poll on our social media channels to see if our followers were asking their customers what information they needed on the invoices before they raised it. And on Twitter, 85.7% said no, because they use a template. So they just send a template to their customer. They don't personalize or customize it. So we'd love to ask you the same question. I'm just launching a poll. Bear with me one moment. You should see it on your screen right now. We'd love to know, do you ask your customer what information they need on the invoice before you raise it? Yes or no, you use a template. Fantastic, thank you. A few of you are replying. Okay, so vast majority is saying no. I'm going to leave you 1 or 2 more seconds. Any of you want to continue? Just give your answer. Okay, I'll end the poll now. But so we have 27% of you are asking their customer what they need on the invoice before raising it, but 73% of you are using a template. Well, fantastic for those 2 categories, because Philip has lots of tips for all of you in terms of, if you're already asking your customer questions, what kind of questions, and we're going to drill down into the specificity of the questions. And for those of you who are using a template, we're going to really cover why asking the right question can really help in terms of getting your invoice processed on time. So first question, Philip, really, why is it important to understand the invoice approval process?
Well, it's important, Val, because cash flow is critical. And whether businesses have started this year, as 25% have, or whether they've been in business for more than 10 years, cash flow is and always will be critical to the success. Businesses fail when they run out of cash. So getting invoices through the system and getting money in is absolutely key. And if I can mention it, that's one of the reasons I think the cash flow insights tool, excuse me, that Tide provides is so important. It allows businesses to look at their cash flow, to plan for it and to think about it. And it's a really useful tool that gives them the depth to do that. But to answer your specific question, you need to know where the invoices go, how they get processed. So you need to know where to send them. There's no point sending an invoice to an office in Glasgow if the invoice processing is happening in London, for example. So get the invoice to the right place. Understand, once it's been received, what process the invoice goes through internally, particularly for large customers. They will have an invoice approval process. Sometimes that's electronic and people just get an email that says, can you approve this invoice? Sometimes, perhaps surprisingly, even for very large businesses, it's still a paper trail. If the invoice has got to be sent from Glasgow to Leicester to London before it gets paid, then you need to know that and need to be able to follow that through. And who needs to approve the invoice? If your invoice is for a few £100, it may be it only needs one signature from the person that authorised the purchase in the first place. If it's for several £1,000s, it might need signature of more than one person. If one of those people is on holiday, that will slow the process down. So understanding that and knowing what has to happen is really important and really crucial. And when a payment runs, does the company pay invoices once a month? Does it do a weekly payment run? Does it do a daily payment run? Knowing that is really useful. Making sure if it's a twice a month payment run, then you need to make sure that your invoice gets in at the right point in time so it can get approved in time for the next payment run. If you miss it by a day, you lose a whole fortnight or maybe even a whole month. So understanding that sort of thing is really important. And you don't find that out normally from the person who just places an order with you. So you need to just dig around a bit and ask the right questions of the right people. If you understand the invoicing process, then it makes life so much easier. I invoiced a business recently and it didn't get paid, and I chased it, and we'll come on to that in the next masterclass. But I chased it. And the response was, oh, someone forgot to set you up on the system, sorry. So if you're not on the system, you can't be paid. So understanding whether or not there is a system on which you need to be verified before an invoice can be processed is important. You can send the invoice in, it can be right, it can be approved, but if it gets to account payable and you don't exist, there's no one for them to pay. And asking questions about invoices they can't process is not top of their priority. You know, you'll be falling down the food chain, so you need to make sure that that's there. So a really simple question before you even invoice anything, and when you first have the relationship, is there anything I need to do to make sure I'm on your system to allow myself to be paid? And very often you'll find there's a simple form, or worse, a difficult form to fill in that they need in order to do it. They want to verify that you exist. They want to verify that they've got the right details. They want to verify that your bank account details are valid to avoid fraud. All of those due diligence checks will be undertaken. And if you can short circuit that and get that done before you even raise an invoice, you're ahead of the game, and that's worth doing.
Absolutely. And I think that goes back to some of the points we mentioned in previous masterclasses, but it's really have the conversation early on and from the very beginning of the relationship. And I think it's always great to remind everyone that it's okay to ask. This is not, it's on the contrary, it's going to help you in the long run in that relationship with that customer. So absolutely, that conversation, having really understanding what their process is on your customer side. But if we can just go a bit more into details into how do you avoid the risk of getting invoicing wrong?
So the simple one is the point we covered in the Who webinar. Make sure the invoice is in the right name and sent to the right place. I probably said this on that webinar, but I talked to a debt collection lawyer a couple of years ago, and he told me that a huge proportion of the debts passed to them to go legal on were in the wrong company name. If you invoice Val Hutchings 1986 Limited, and it should be Val Hutchings 1998 Limited, she can't process the invoice. It's in the wrong company name. If she's VAT registered, she can't put it through her books. So there's nowhere to go. So it has to be the right name, the right style. Is it a sole trader? Is it a limited company? What's a limited company name, and so on. So that's the first step. The second step is making sure it goes to the right place. Many companies have a specific area or address they want invoices sent to. If you send it to the person that placed the order with you and they're in Loughborough, but the invoices have to be processed in London, that invoice is got to get from Loughborough to London. When the guy's in the office next, if he's working from home, that may not be for a while. So you've got to make sure that all of those things happen. And that's just the very basic stuff. And then there's other things you can get wrong. If you misquote the product and don't describe it properly, it might not get recognized by the person that's looking at the invoice. If you misquote the order number, and order numbers are really important. Big businesses rely on order numbers in order to get things through their system and to match them up. So if they say they want an order number, then quote an order number. I remember talking to a very small business who was complaining about one of the large supermarkets a few years ago. And I said to him, talk me through the process, and he did. And he said, I send the invoice in, it comes back and they tell me to add their order number, then I send it again and then they pay me, but it's a month later than it would have been. And I said to him, well, why don't you quote the order number on the original invoice? And he said, it's a point of principle. Why should I? They should know who I am. Well, points of principle are great, but he was losing a month's cash flow regularly on his point of principle. A big business needs an order number, so make sure you quote it, make sure you get it right, and make sure it's visible. Find out what information they need. I see we had a question from, I think it was Casta, just now about, is it important to specify payment terms on the invoice? Absolutely it is. The invoice should focus on what the due date of the invoice is. The invoice date is important, it needs to be there, but make sure you say this invoice is due on the 14th of March on the invoice, or the 10th of March, or the 28th of February, or whatever the date is. And I'll mention this again, but the Tide template allows you to do that. And the email that accompanies the invoice specifically says this invoice is for this amount and is due on this date, and it's a really good reminder into the organization. But make sure that you quote the payment terms, because the large company might assume that you're on their standard terms of 30 days or 60 days. If you've agreed that for terms of 14 days, then make sure you set that out on the invoice. It doesn't guarantee that they'll adhere to them, but it guarantees that they can't say they didn't know when you were expecting to be paid. We talked about finding out what information they need, and I think it was 73% this morning said they use a template rather than customizing. Well, you can do both. The Tide template allows you to add notes. It allows you to describe something as you want to describe it. I raise invoices for a few organizations, and I having got it right the first time, I make sure that I look at the previous invoice when I do the next one and just use the same words on the basis that if it worked once, it should work again. But if the business wants a particular code or a particular reference or a particular, sometimes if you're providing a product, businesses want you to specify in the description that the product meets a BS standard, for example. You know, adding those 3 words can make a real difference in order to getting it approved. So make sure you know that, either get that in the notes or get it in the description. And most templates, including the type one, have a free form text opportunity. So just use the words that work and make sure you include everything that the customer wants. And you know what? If the customer wants you to send 3 copies of the invoice on pink paper, on font 14 Helvetica, to an office in Glasgow, if it means you're going to get paid, then why not? Do what they need, do whatever they want to get paid, make it easy for them, and meet that need. And just make sure you can do what they want. Many years ago, when I was very young in credit management, I was sent out to the offices of British Rail in Crewe, who were awful at paying our invoices. And the reason was very simple. It became very apparent very quickly. Their order number was 14 digits long, and our order number field on our invoice was 12 digits long. So every single invoice couldn't be automatically processed. It had to be checked back to orders to try and find the right order. We increased the order field length on our invoices, and suddenly payments just suddenly started happening. Simple things like that can make a real difference. I know I'm talking pre-computer and pre-automation, but it is still the same principle. If someone's got a particular order number format, then make sure your order number meets that. And ask the right questions to make sure you understand what's necessary. Don't just assume that because an invoice works for one organization, it will work for another.
Absolutely. Ask the right question, have the conversation. And also, one thing I'm really taking away from everything you just said, Philip, is take the extra 5-10 minutes to make sure the invoice is exactly what your customer needs it to be, with the information, so that those 5-10 minutes that you've invested on a day where surely you're very, very busy, but those 5 minutes you've invested means you're going to not spend them chasing the invoice or going back and forth, having to adjust that invoice because some informations were missing.
Absolutely right. And many organizations won't accept an amendment. They'll just say, cancel the invoice and re-raise it. And if you do that, then the chances of getting it processed on the original timescale are much less, because they'll see it as a new invoice, and you lose out every which way.
Right, and then you get processed onto another circle of their finance team will process invoices, you know, in batches depending on the size of the business. So then you have missed the opportunity to get paid before and on time. You've mentioned some fantastic tips, Philip already. Sorry, and Moen and Sajid are already saying, you know, this is a good point, great point. Thanks. So thank you so much. If we were to go into even more tips to, you know, to ensure your invoice get through the system successfully, what would you share with us, Philip?
I would say that as long as you're sure the invoice is right and you've gone through all of those steps, the next step and perhaps the final step is making sure it gets through the system. Okay. And even if the invoice is perfect, that doesn't guarantee it will. So I would say, particularly if this is going to be a key customer, make friends with the right people. You know, what's wrong if you're in the premises of your customer? Ask to be introduced to the accounts lady. Just get to know her name, get to know her phone number, get to know her email address, so that when an invoice doesn't get approved, you can easily just drop her a note or give her a call and say, is there a problem? Ask her what you can do to make her life easier. If you make invoices easy to be approved, then that's great. If she says, I want them by email, or I want them electronically, or I want them by post, then you know what you can do to make her life easier. And you know, I know one business that's really good at this, and this woman has made some really good friends with accounts people in the customers that she has, and she just puts little handwritten notes in with the invoice when she sends it. So she says things like, I hope your son had a good birthday. I hope you enjoyed your holiday in Turkey. Whatever has been in a conversation at some point in the past. And you know what? We're all people. we buy from people, we pay to people. And if I get an invoice through the post and there's a little post-it in there that refers to something that I talked to someone about a few weeks ago, don't I feel more inclined to process that invoice quickly and help them? If there's a problem, don't I feel more inclined to try and make life easier for them and help them? So it's really important that you do that and make it humanistic. So have a conversation. Tell the customer that you're a small business, that you rely on their cash. So how can you make it easier for them to pay you? And if something goes wrong, you've then got someone you can talk to and make sure that they help you. And perhaps almost as important as any of this is keep track of whether invoices have been paid or not. It's easy to lose sight of a small invoice and see, oh, I thought that one had been paid. It hasn't, particularly if you're raising large volumes of small invoices. But the longer you leave it, and we'll focus on this heavily in the next webinar when we talk about where. But I think it's really important that you know what has and hasn't been paid. I don't want to hark back to Tide, but it's a system that I use personally. And if you go onto the invoices screen, it says this invoice is due in 8 days' time. This invoice is 2 days overdue. And that's a really easy way just to look and say, hang on a minute, there's one that isn't. I'll bang a quick email off, I'll make a quick call, I'll do something to make sure. If you leave it, then the risk is that nothing happens. So I think it's around just building relationships. And we come back to this over and over again, don't we? Communication. If you're a faceless organization sending faceless invoices to a large bureaucratic organization, you're holding to the system and hoping it works. If you can build personal relationships and friendships, and I'm not suggesting you can do that with every customer, of course you can't, but for the key ones that really matter to you and where you want to make sure you look after them, make sure that they stay with you and make sure they pay you, then build relationships on which you can work.
Absolutely. And I am going to come back to something you said in our previous masterclass, Philip, but you were mentioning how sometimes it comes from a bit of a shyness of not wanting to disturb people or to look pushy or to look like you are, insisting to get a reply from your clients. But you mentioned, on that other episode that on the contrary, you are being professional for asking the right question, establishing that relationship and asking those questions right from the beginning. So I think it's that change of mindset, right? That those relationship, those conversation, that communication that you're going to work on from day one is a way to make for a healthier relationship with your customer and essentially a healthier cash flow for your business.
Absolutely. And I think the bottom line here is that, I've supplied you with goods or services, and this is now my money. You should be paying me. And yes, we should do it professionally, and yes, we should do it nicely, and yes, we should be very friendly, but that's the reality. And if the goods hadn't arrived, then your customer would have been screaming at you, where are the goods I need for my customer? If they haven't paid, the conversation should be exactly the same. And asking professionally is really, really important. I mentioned earlier the example I had where I hadn't been set up on the system, and I looked. It was a tiny invoice. And I looked at it and I thought, shall I bother them? Is it worth me doing it? And I thought, well, I preach this stuff, so I have to. So I did. But if I hadn't done, I could be sitting in a year's time. If I wasn't set up on the system, I was never ever going to be paid. So that simple email changed that around, and actually I was paid yesterday for that particular amount. But that's the point is that saying nothing would not have got me anywhere, and I would have just ended up never being paid for that, and I'd have worked for nothing. Well, that's not why we do things. So it's a really important principle to remember.
Absolutely, and I think as well, in a lot of examples you've mentioned, the human error is a very big one. So, helping our fellow human beings, reminding them, asking them, I think is always a good idea, because we tend to forget things. And so reminders sometimes is a good way to start. Philippe, thank you so much for all these tips. That's very, very helpful. I just want to remind everyone that we have the question box. I hope you can all access it. If you can't access it, just post your questions in the chat. But we are going to go into the Q&A now. Philippe is happy to answer your questions, so please don't hesitate to ask your questions in the box or in the chat room. We'd love to help you and maybe get to help you on very particular situations that are particular to your business. So don't hesitate to ask your questions. In the meantime, Philippe, if you could remind us, the 3 main takeaways from this masterclass that everyone watching us either live or later on YouTube can, take on and action even today to improve their cash flow.
I think the 3 takeaways, Val, are firstly, know how the invoice will get approved. So just know the process it's going to go. The second one is know what's needed on the invoice and provide it. So find out what the invoice requirements are. And the third one for me is ease the invoice through the system. Whether that's sending it to the right place or getting it friends to the right person or whatever it might be, but make it easy for it to get through the system so it goes in and comes out the other side.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Philippe. That's super, super helpful. And just as you're all writing questions in the Q&A box, I'm also going to launch a poll just to, if you could rate this masterclass, 5 being the highest score. It'd be very helpful for us to have your feedback, and don't hesitate as well to give us some feedback in the comments. Let us know what you'd like us to cover, or maybe any comments you have. Please put it in the comment box. I'll let you rate the session now. But I also wanted to send, and I'm going to send this on the chat now, the episode 1, 2, and 3. And this is episode 4 of our masterclass cash flow series. So you'll have access to all the other episodes in the chat. I also wanted to send you, sorry, that's going to be a lot of different links, but I wanted to send you our events page, then our Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube pages. If you wanted to follow us on social media, we share a lot of small business tips, but also all the future events we're about to organize for small businesses. We share them all on our social media channels. So if you follow us, you'll be sure to not miss anything. And then I've also linked to our cash flow insight tool page, because we've mentioned it, it's incredibly relevant. If you wanted to learn more about that tool to help you forecast and master your cash flow within the Tide app. It's also available to non-Tide member with open access and open banking. So, feel free to have a look and let us know if you have any questions. Great. So I'm just checking. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, for voting. It sounds like the masterclass is you liked it, so thank you so much. If you have further feedback, please do let us know. So I think we have a first question. Hello, Camilla. Hi, Camilla. So my question is, when clients are not on direct debit, they only therefore pay for classes that they attend, but sometimes classes are just 50% of the month, so not much revenue. I wondered if it would be appropriate to charge slightly higher if they only want 2 classes a month for their child's gymnastic and not the full classes available. It's tricky as I'm giving them the option to pay flexible buybacks, but then I don't get their full amount if they have holidays. Hope that makes sense.
Hi, Camilla, and good to be talking to you by webinar rather than by email, as we've normally been communicating. I think it's wholly appropriate. I think that you're a small business. You're trying to make a living for yourself, and you're giving a good service. If people want the flexibility, then I think it's right that they should pay more for that flexibility. Personally, I'm not particular marketing expert, but it seems to me that it's only fair. There are other areas where, if you subscribe to something, you pay less than if you buy it as a one-off. Amazon, subscribe and save is cheaper than just buying as a one-off, to encourage people to buy more. And I think if you've got a service that is based on a premise of 4 sessions a month and people only use half of those, then it's perfectly reasonable that they should pay a premium. Or looking at it a different way, the people that use more should get a discount for being regular users. And I think that's wholly appropriate. One other question I've thought of, which hasn't come up, but I'll raise if that's okay, Val, is what do you do when the customer just says they haven't received the invoice? And despite all the getting it right and doing all of those things we've talked about, they just say, haven't seen it, can't process it, and won't start counting the clock until we see it. I think that my advice there would be just to make sure that you do everything you can to be able to demonstrate they have seen it. So if you send it by email, then get a read receipt so you can repeat that to them and say, yep, you saw it on this particular date, and we'll cover that again when we talk about where next month. But if you're posting it, then if it was me, I would post it, but I would email it as well, just so that I can demonstrate it's gone. And if the answer is that they genuinely say they haven't received it, then I'll email it to you now, and I'll ring you in 10 minutes to make sure you've got it. Just take the excuse away, remove it from them.
Fantastic. And yeah, I think once again, we do tend to forget, and myself included, but you absolutely can call your customers, especially the numbers, are in the email signature or that kind of thing. I think it's easier now because we're working from, most of us are still working from home. We are only communicating via email, and sometimes you forget that you can actually call up. So, calling up and making sure they receive the invoice 10 minutes after you send it is a good way of doing it. Absolutely. So we've got a question. Well, thank you, Camilla. I'm really happy that this could help. We've got a next question from Sajid. Hi, Philip. My business have food. When delivery comes, I'm looking to pay invoice with me in my office. I'm not sure, Sajid, if you mean that you might miss the invoice because you might not be there at the same time as the delivery.
While Sajid's looking at that, Val, there's a comment on the Q&A box from an anonymous attendee, which I think is for you. Can
Yes.
Tide be used for money transfer business, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for that question. We are a business current account. So for your business to handle all your finances, I'm going to send you, that question disappeared. Oh, because it's censored now, sorry. So I'm going to send you a link to our business current account page where you can see all the different, all the different tools we have directly in one app. So, scheduled payments, direct debit, statements, our different limits management and accounting integration. So yes, absolutely. And if you need more information about Tide and our business current account, do please get in touch with the team. We'd love to help you with that. And if you have any more questions, let us know. Okay.
I'm not sure, Val, whether Sajid's question was a sort of comment or a question, but if he wants to drop you an email or drop me a message on LinkedIn, then happy to answer that more fully if it is a question.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Philip. But yeah, Sajid, if you wanted to, exactly as Philip said, either just let us know maybe in a bit more details if it's a question in the chat, or reach out to Philip directly on LinkedIn if you wanted to, of course. Okay. I'm not sure if there is any more questions. Still have a couple of minutes if there was another question for Philip. Val, do you have a link for the invoice in the tag? So you can access all your invoices through directly within your Tide app and on Tide on the web. I will send you, what I will do is I will send you a link to our website so that you have more information about our invoice tool, if that's helpful. Just give me second, I'll just send that to you here.
While you're doing that, Val, I can't speak too highly of the Tide invoicing functionality. It's probably the thing about Tide that's impressed me the most since I became an account holder. But I mean, you can raise invoices on your phone. And literally, and it's just so simple, step-by-step process. As long as you've got the right information to hand before you start, so you put the right information in and make sure that you get the requirements the customer has, as we've talked already this morning, then it's so simple to use, and then managing them is great, and you can tie them up to payments coming in, and it's really slick and very clever.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I have shared it on the comment box as well. So you've got, I've shared the first one, which is just tide.co/features, which gives you an overview of all our features, but then I sent a second link, especially about invoicing. Yeah, and as Philip said, you know, fully customizable. You can add the VAT if you need to, stay organized because it can match the payments to invoices. You can keep them, mark them as paid. Just keeping track of the payment. So hopefully it's helpful. We've literally built it to make sure our members, small business owners, you know, could have that extra bit of help to manage their finances and, you know, have a clear overview of their cash flow. Great. Well, I think I'm just going to check one last time the Q&A box, but I think that's it in terms of questions. So thank you, Damien, saying thank you very much, Val and Philip, very useful session, and I look forward to checking out the other masterclasses. Well, thank you so much, Damien. We talking about next masterclasses, thank you so much for the reminder. The episode 5 is going to be in March, on the 23rd of March. We will share it soon on the website in our event section. I've sent the link a bit above in the comment box, but do keep an eye out. We will share the link to register soon. But in the masterclass number 5, we are covering the where, Philip, right? Don't know if you want to give a bit of a preview in terms of what we cover in the where.
In very simple terms, we'll be covering where is my money.
Fantastic. So a bit of, you know, reacting when the payment hasn't arrived, how to effectively chase payment, not chase pavement. That's the song. And then the escalation routes when necessary. So once again, a really packed with information and tips masterclass for episode 5, coming in 23rd of March. So yes, thank you again so much for all your questions and all your feedback. Thank you so much for being so active on the comments and the question. Kester, thank you as well very much for being here today. So thank you to all of you who've joined us live and asked your question to Philip. Philip, thank you so much for a fantastic episode 4, and looking forward to seeing you all for episode 5 in March.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you now. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.